Hello, everybody. Raven Knight here, and welcome back. We are going into our final day in the story of Esther. This is our final episode on Esther. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. I have really enjoyed this series. Esther is one of my favorite books in the Bible to go through, one of my favorites in the Old Testament anyway. And I've had such a fun time reading over this again and really analyzing and dissecting the text and the story of Esther. Hope you have too. Let me know in the comments section at the end of the video what it is you liked most about the series, what you learned that you didn't know before, things like that. Love to hear your take on that. But today we are going to go into the last portion of Esther. And you might think, well, Raven, we kind of wrapped it all up, didn't we? I mean, it all had a happy ending, Esther becomes queen. Haman is killed. Mordecai is vindicated. Everything should be working out great. Isn't everything wrapped up? Well, unfortunately, not quite, because y'all are forgetting one little detail. Remember that Haman, the big bad guy of all this, he had signed into effect a law that on the 13th day of December, all of the Jews would be killed by their enemies, because it basically made it legal that on this day, all of the enemies of the Jews would be able to come out of hiding and massacre and plunder the Jewish people, and it would be totally fine. It would be totally legal. And remember, nothing that the king signs or makes into law can ever be reversed, not even by the king himself. So we've still got a problem. And so it's time for Esther to fix that, because until that is fixed, there is still a lot of sorrow going on. And while you guys are turning to Esther chapter 8 to get into this, I'd like to discuss a little question with you guys. I'd like to discuss this. Do you ever feel hopeless, sorrowful, lost, helpless? Do you ever feel that? I think that quite a lot we do feel that way. I feel that way quite frequently. Especially with all the stuff going on in my life these days, that there's just been so much that's gone on, so many new things, so many new problems that I've had to face, so many issues that I've had to wrestle with, and it's not fun. Ooh, I tell you the truth, it is. It is not fun. And there are times where I look around and I wonder, how the heck am I going to get out of this? But the truth is, and what we learned from this last portion of Esther, is that God has the power to turn sorrow into victory, to turn defeat into victory. I think there are times where we like to say to ourselves, there's no way I'm getting out of this. There's no way this is going to turn itself around. There's no way that we can possibly work our way through this. But that is not how God works. God can turn sorrow into victory. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to be reading in chapter 8. And now we're going to go ahead and skip to verse 3 of chapter 8. Okay? So Esther chapter 8 verse 3. Let's read into it. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the golden scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. If it pleases the king, she said, and if he regards me with favor and thinks it the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have impaled him on the pole he set up. Now write another decree in the king's name in behalf of the Jews as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. So what we see through this, what we see through what's happened is Haman is dead and the danger is gone. Like I said, no law signed by the king can be revoked. And Xerxes gave his ring to Haman to sign this law. So in a moment of brilliance, the king says, hey, I can't undo this law. I can't fix this by just writing it out. But here's what I will do. I'm going to give you my ring, just like I did with Haman. And you write whatever law you want to make things right. You write whatever law you want to fix this. So basically giving Esther and Mordecai complete control. Hey, you know what? I can't reverse what I've already written. But you can write whatever you want to make it better. So how do they do it? Well, let's go ahead and read verse 11 through 13, because verses 9 through 10 basically explain that they went and wrote a law that was passed around to everyone. And here's what the law says in verse 11. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So, consider that. Consider that. You might not think much of this, like, it's not that big of a deal. What's it do? The Jews now have the right to defend themselves now, okay. But how does that help? The enemy's still coming. And even if they have the right to defend themselves now, what can they realistically do? Well, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The reason this was such a big deal was that before, the Jews could not resist what was coming. According to the law, they were helpless. But now, they are not. With the king's permission, and more than that, read verse 11. You need to read verse 11 very carefully, where it says, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. Does that sound like mere defensive self-defense? No. What this law is it's a call to arms. Mordecai and Xerxes just gave Jews the permission to not only defend themselves, but to take the fight to their enemies, to anyone who might attack them, to erase the remaining enemies of the Jews in the empire of Persia. This didn't just save the Jews. It turned defeat into a victory. But want to see this get even funnier? Watch this. Jump to Esther 9. Jump to Esther 9. This is great. So, in Esther 9, verse 1, we're going to read all the way to verse 12, okay? We're going to read a lot, so bear with me. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the table was turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those determined to destroy them. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's administrators helped the Jews, because fear of Mordecai had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the provinces and became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adalia, Iridatha, Parmatha, Arisia, Aridai, and Vaizatha, the 10 sons of Haman of Hamadatha, the enemies of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on their plunder. The number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? It will also be granted. This was complete and total victory. And not only did they destroy the sons of Haman, not only did they destroy the enemies of their people, but the king officially helped them because of how popular and how powerful Mordecai had become. The officials helped. The people helped. And did you catch that ending? King Xerxes goes to Esther after all this and goes, hey babe, your people are saved, but now tell me, you want more, don't you? Name it. What can I do for you? What can I give to you? I'm not done giving you stuff. I'm not done making your life wonderful. Pretty nice guy that Xerxes, right? Pretty crazy. We'll wrap up there, I think. I think we can end it there, because the rest of the story of Esther, and I do encourage you to read it, the rest of the story of Esther is Esther saying, let's keep going. Make Mordecai your number one guy, put him in Haman's place. Let's keep this victory rolling for my people. Why do I love the story of Esther? A couple of reasons. Like I said before, and I've said this, I think, in every single video on Esther. It is one of the 2 books in the Bible, besides Song of Solomon, that never mentions the name of God once. And yet, you see God in every aspect of the story. In fact, do you want to know something cool? My buddy Jay pointed this out to me, and I hadn't thought about it, but it's true. Do you see how Esther herself is an allegorical Christ character? What does Esther do? She is placed into a world and lifestyle she is that she doesn't belong in. She's queen, but she's just a simple girl. She's not born to royalty, but she's brought into a new location, a new position. She realizes the destruction of her people is coming, and she brings herself before the king and petitions for us, begs for us, tries to save us. What did Jesus do? Humbled himself by coming to earth, petitioned to the Lord for us, sacrificed himself for us, saved us, and turned sorrow into victory. That famous verse that we all know, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that who should ever believe in him will not perish, but have eternal life. Jesus is the way to salvation. He saved us. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We were all bound for hell. A lot of people like to say, God sends us to hell. He doesn't send us to hell. We're already on the fast track. We got on that highway and we keep driving. It's Jesus who offers us a way out. Jesus who spared us. Jesus who turned our sorrow, our defeat, into victory. And he did it by petitioning God, offering himself as a sacrifice instead. Esther did that for the Jews. She took a risk, a big risk. She could have been killed. And you notice how she constantly says, if I found favor with you, if I've done all that's right in your eyes, if it pleases you, because she knows that Haman is favored by the king, and the king could very easily go, I don't know, Esther. I trust Haman. I trust this guy. I don't trust your people. It's not what he does. There is so much to appreciate and unpack of the story of Esther. So much to analyze. As we've proven in this very long series, I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect the series to go quite as long as it did. But I think that we can take some wonderful things from this. First of all, there are 3 things I want you to take from the story of Esther. The first one, God is there even when he's not mentioned. You're going to be in places, you're going to be in situations, you're going to be in circumstances where God feels like he is not there. Have you, like when I was a kid growing up in school, God was not mentioned often in school. That didn't change the fact that he was there. He was there even when I didn't feel him or hear his name. He was there. And just because God's name is not mentioned in Esther doesn't mean he's not active. Number 2, you are going to face enemies on all sides, and you're going to face circumstances that seem like you are in the darkest of places. Enemies always are around us. Haman was an enemy, and there were still enemies surrounding the Jews. You may be in a situation where you have enemies surrounding you, and you may feel it. God is still looking out for you. God will find a way to turn your sorrow and your defeat into victory. But it requires faithfulness in him. It requires you to do what's necessary. Because remember, this salvation didn't come from nothing. Esther had to step up. That's the third thing. God has put you in these situations. God has put you in difficult circumstances for a reason. God has a plan. Here's the thing. God has a plan for you, a plan for yourself, a plan for your family, a plan for his children. He has a plan. And he gives you the wonderful opportunity to be a part of that plan. And that's when you step up to be part of it. And if you say no, don't think God is going to wring his hands. Oh man, he said no. Raven said no, guys, what do we do? No. He's going to keep going with his plan. You just don't get to be part of it. I think the most valuable passage in all of Esther, the most valuable passage, is in Esther chapter 4, verse 13 through 14. Mordecai sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. For such a time as this. I think those are the ultimate words of Esther. For such a time as this. God has a time and a place ready for his will to be done. Will you stand up and be ready for it? Will you answer God with yes when he asks you to go, when he asks you to act? Will you answer with yes? And I know it's not that easy. Believe me, I know. God doesn't speak to us like he used to through burning bushes or through angelic messengers, right? He doesn't always make things obvious. He doesn't give up billboard signs. But I was talking to my buddy Jay, again, this was a couple days ago, but I was talking to him about this. He said, one thing we need to remember, as long as we're walking in God, according to God's will, doing what he wants of us, living according to his law, God will get us there. God will get us there. We just need to keep walking. And God will guide our steps. But will we walk? Yes. I hope your answer is yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our Bible study series on the book of Esther. I have had a wonderful time with it. I hope you have as well. I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. I hope you took something wonderful from this. Let me know in the comment section what you took. And as always, guys, I will see you in my next video. Take care.